The eye in the sky sees everything. Every Las Vegas casino hides a secret room. No windows, no clocks, just walls of glowing monitors. A place where silence is broken only by the hum of machines and the scratch of pens marking down suspicious behavior. From here, trained eyes track every gambler, every dealer, every bet. They can zoom in close enough to read the serial number on a dollar bill, or to catch the tremor in a nervous gambler's hand. And tonight, one of those gamblers is Jeremy Lewis. He's 20 years old, a construction worker, a nobody. And yet right now, he's at the cashier cage of a billion-dollar casino, sliding 3 black $100 chips across the glass. To anyone else, it looks routine. People exchange chips for cash every second in Vegas. But to the cameras, something feels wrong. A guard leans forward in the security room. Another quietly picks up a phone. Jeremy has no idea. His heart hammers against his ribs. His palms are slick with sweat. He forces a smile as the cashier inspects the chips. She taps one against the counter, pauses, tilts it under the light. Seconds drag out like hours. Jeremy knows if she spots a flaw, security will close in within seconds. If she doesn't, he walks out with cash he never earned. This is the razor's edge moment where his life can go one of two ways. But how did an ordinary construction worker end up gambling with his freedom in the heart of Las Vegas? To answer that, we need to rewind. Chapter 1. Hard Times. Jeremy Lewis wasn't supposed to be here. He grew up like a lot of kids on the rougher edges of Nevada. Working class family, money always tight, school never a priority, trouble always close by. By the time he was a teenager, Jeremy had already picked up a few charges. Minor stuff, fights, a brush with drugs, even a forgery charge. Enough to make police familiar with his name, but not enough to lock him up for good. When he turned 18, he swore to straighten out. For nearly 2 years he did. Construction was his way out. Hard work, long hours, but it paid the bills. He worked under his boss, Eric, a man in his 30s, married, more responsible, but weighed down by the same pressures. Mortgage payments, family expenses, bills that stacked up faster than paychecks. They weren't partners in crime. They were just two regular guys trying to stay afloat in a city that devoured the weak. But Las Vegas is a cruel teacher. Every night, driving home from dusty job sites, Jeremy and Eric saw it. The Strip. Neon towers stretching into the desert sky. Billboards glowing with promises of instant wealth. Jackpot winners holding oversized checks, smiling like gods. For construction workers grinding to earn $700 a week, it was torture. The city dangled riches in their faces. Riches they would never touch. One night, as they sat in traffic staring at a giant Caesar's Palace billboard, Eric finally said out loud what they were both thinking. Eric, gruff, tired. "You ever wonder how they make those chips?" Jeremy laughed, but the question stuck in his head. How did casinos, the most secure buildings on Earth, really keep track of billions in little clay discs? It was an innocent question, a passing thought. But in Las Vegas, even a passing thought can change everything. Chapter 2. The Idea. A few nights later, Jeremy showed up at Eric's garage with a bag of cheap chips he'd bought at a souvenir shop. They laid them out on the workbench, turning them over, tapping them on the wood, comparing them to the real chips they'd seen in casinos. They were crude tourist junk, but the idea had planted itself. Jeremy, excited, "Look, man, it's just clay, paint, a little design work. That's it." Eric shook his head. He knew casinos were no joke. They had cameras, guards, security teams that didn't mess around. But Jeremy couldn't let it go. Night after night, he came back with new ideas. Paint samples, stickers, home printer templates. They boiled chips in water to peel off inlays. They sanded down edges. They experimented with airbrushes. Most attempts looked terrible. Too shiny, too light. Chips that clinked wrong when stacked. But with every failure, they learned. Jeremy was reckless, creative, willing to try anything. Eric was cautious, methodical, focused on making something that could pass not under a glance but under suspicion. After weeks of trial and error, they finally held one up under the garage light that made them both pause. It wasn't perfect, but it was close. Close enough to risk. Chapter 3, The Breakthrough. They started small. Jeremy pocketed a single chip, a $100 fake disguised from a $1 blank. He walked into a casino with Eric waiting nervously in the car outside. The plan was simple. Play it, cash it, and walk out. The casino floor was a sensory overload. Slot machines ringing, dealers calling out bets, tourists screaming at wins and losses. Jeremy's hands shook as he slid the chip onto the blackjack felt. The dealer barely glanced at it. She flipped cards, dealt hands, swept losses, paid wins. When Jeremy pushed the chip forward to cash out, his throat tightened. But the dealer scooped it, dropped it into her tray, and handed him a stack of bills. That was it. No alarms, no guards, no questions. Jeremy walked out, heart pounding, with $100 in real money. Back in the car, Eric could hardly believe it. Eric whispering, "Jesus Christ, it worked." That single chip was the crack in the dam. Chapter 4, First Test Becomes a Flood. They scaled up carefully, a few chips here, a few chips there. Jeremy would gamble lightly, sprinkling in fake chips among real ones. If he won, he'd cash out. If he lost, it didn't matter. The fake chips were worthless anyway. Eric stayed behind the scenes, refining their process. He invested in better airbrushes, higher quality adhesives, inlays printed on specialty paper. He treated each chip like a miniature work of art. Soon they had a system. Acquire cheap chips, transform them into high-value fakes, disperse them across casinos to avoid suspicion, wash them through gambling before cashing out. It was a small-scale operation, but small scale was enough. A few $100s a night, then a few thousand a week. They weren't rich yet, but they weren't broke anymore. And for the first time, both men felt like they were beating the system that had always beaten them. Chapter 5, Cracks in the Plan. The money changed them. Jeremy started spending fast. New clothes, expensive dinners, late nights on the strip. He partied with women who wouldn't have looked at him twice a year earlier. Eric grew paranoid. He barely touched the money. He worried every chip might be the one that got caught. Every security camera might be watching them closer. Every knock at the door might be police. And he wasn't wrong to worry. Casinos started noticing irregularities. Chips with slightly different textures. Stacks that felt just a little too light. Surveillance teams flagged players who seemed too lucky, too consistent. It wasn't enough for a raid, but eyes were turning. Then Jeremy made the biggest mistake of all. He talked. To friends, to girls, to people who liked the sound of quick money. Word spread, and in Vegas, word always finds the wrong ears. Chapter 6, The Big Score. Despite the risks, Jeremy wanted more. He pitched Eric a plan, Atlantic City, a bigger run, a weekend blitz where they'd cash in tens of thousands before anyone could react. Eric hesitated. He could feel the walls closing in. But Jeremy pushed hard. Jeremy grinning. One more, one big score. We're set for life. They prepared hundreds of chips, packed carefully, ready for transport. But they never made it out of Vegas. Security had been watching. Law enforcement had been listening. One morning, Eric's garage door burst open. FBI agents stormed in. Chips scattered across the concrete. Evidence bags filled. Jeremy and Eric were dragged out in handcuffs. For two construction workers who thought they'd beaten the system, it was over. Chapter 7, The Fall. The charges were heavy: counterfeiting, fraud, conspiracy. Bail was set at $250,000 each. For men who had started this scheme because they couldn't pay bills, it might as well have been life. Eric cooperated, hoping for leniency. He portrayed himself as the cautious one, dragged along by Jeremy's recklessness. Jeremy, cocky to the end, played tough, but prosecutors had everything they needed. Thousands of fake chips, surveillance footage, witness testimony. Both men faced years behind bars, their families shattered, their reputations destroyed. They hadn't beaten Las Vegas. They'd simply borrowed time until Las Vegas beat them back. Chapter 8, Aftermath. But the story didn't end with their arrests. Casinos learned a hard lesson. If two construction workers with a garage and some glue could pull this off, What could organized criminals do? The answer was terrifying, so the industry adapted, fast. By the late 2000s, casinos rolled out RFID chips, each embedded with microchips that transmitted unique ID codes. No more simple clay, no more easy counterfeits. Every chip could be tracked, logged, verified. If you tried Jeremy and Eric's scheme today, you wouldn't last 5 minutes. Their con didn't just fail, it forced an entire industry to evolve. Jeremy and Eric weren't masterminds. They weren't genius criminals. They were two desperate men who saw a crack in the system and tried to force it open. For a moment, they lived like high rollers. For a moment, they felt untouchable. But Las Vegas doesn't forgive. And in the end, the house always wins. So the next time you hold a casino chip in your hand, remember it's not just clay. It's history, it's security, and it's a reminder that no matter how clever you think you are, the eye in the sky never blinks. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out my other deep dives into the hidden scandals of Las Vegas.